At my son-in-law's birthday dinner, he raised his glass and said, "Here's to Margaret, the mother-in-law nobody wants around." My daughter stared at her plate. No one defended me. I simply smiled, lifted my glass, and stayed silent. Hours later, I canceled the loan keeping his business alive. That one call shattered his empire. I'm glad you're here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. The restaurant hummed with laughter and clinking glasses. But for me, every sound seemed to scrape against raw nerves. I smoothed down the navy dress I had bought just for tonight, my hands trembling despite the calm mask on my face. Tonight was supposed to be a celebration. Ethan Ward's 45th birthday. My son-in-law, successful businessman, husband to my only daughter Rachel, and the man who had spent the last decade subtly chipping away at my place in this family. Rachel had begged me to come. "It'll be good for everyone, Mom," she'd said, her eyes hopeful. I had agreed, though the word family no longer wrapped me in warmth the way it once did. Instead, it pressed against my chest like a stone. Still, I arrived on time, clutching a small wrapped gift, determined to be present for Rachel's sake. The hostess guided me to the private dining room. Voices spilled out, the kind of easy laughter that falters when a storm approaches. Sure enough, as I stepped in, the sound faltered. Rachel hurried to me, hugging me quickly. Her perfume, no doubt chosen by Ethan, lingered in the air between us. "Mom, you made it," she said brightly, but her smile trembled at the edges. "Wouldn't miss it," I answered softly. And I meant it. Despite everything, I always showed up. Ethan sat at the head of the long table, his dark hair threaded with distinguished silver, his tailored suit immaculate. He had aged into a man who looked like he belonged on magazine covers. His confidence carefully polished to shine in every room he entered. He gave me a nod, the bare minimum of acknowledgement. "Margaret," he said, my name sounding foreign in his mouth. "You found the place all right?" I resisted the urge to roll my eyes. I had been coming to this restaurant since before Ethan was born. It was here that Robert, my husband of 43 years, had celebrated our 40th anniversary before cancer stole him from me. "I managed," I replied, taking the empty seat farthest from Ethan and Rachel. Dinner crawled forward in polite conversation and strained smiles. I focused on my grandchildren, their stories of school and soccer games bringing a measure of joy, even as I caught Ethan's subtle eye rolls whenever I spoke. By the time the cake arrived, lavish, iced with happy 45th birthday, Ethan, my strength was wearing thin. Then came the toasts. Rachel went first, her voice glowing with admiration as she praised her husband's achievements. Friends followed, telling stories of Ethan's brilliance in business, his generosity, his charm. Finally, Ethan rose, champagne flute in hand, his smile honed to perfection. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he began, his voice smooth, almost hypnotic. "Family means everything to me." His eyes swept the table, lingering on each guest before landing squarely on me. His smile sharpened into something only I could recognize as cruel. "And I'd like to make a special toast," he continued. The air shifted, expectant. "To Margaret Collins, the mother-in-law nobody wants around." The words cut through me like glass. The room fell silent, save for a cough, a clinking fork. My face burned. I felt every pair of eyes on me, waiting for the old widow's reaction to this public humiliation. Ethan chuckled. "Come on, it's just a joke. Margaret knows I'm kidding, right?" He looked at me, daring me to break. I lifted my water glass, the movement steady though my insides shook. "Happy birthday, Ethan," I said softly. My voice carried no tremor, no plea for sympathy. The conversation stumbled back into motion, flowing around me like a river around stone. No one defended me, not even Rachel, who stared at her plate, silent. Later, in the quiet of my empty home, I sat at Robert's desk. For months, I had been sorting through his papers, tying up loose ends of a life cut too short. That night, I found it. Documents for a business loan in Robert's name, still active. Ethan's consulting firm was drawing from it, extended even after Robert's death. My hands trembled as I pieced it together. Ethan had convinced Robert to co-sign years ago, and then shamelessly continued to use his name after he was gone. My husband's reputation, his honor, tethered to a man who had just ridiculed me before family and friends. I picked up the phone and called the bank. My voice steadied as I gave the instructions. I'd like to cancel the loan extension for Ward Consulting. Are you sure, Mrs. Collins? The officer asked gently. I thought of Ethan's smirk, Rachel's downcast eyes, the echo of his cruel words. Yes, I said, I'm absolutely certain. When I hung up, I sat in silence, staring into the darkness outside. For the first time since Robert died, I felt something beyond grief. It wasn't joy, not quite. It was power, a quiet strength rising in the place of years of silence. But as my phone lit up with Rachel's name, I knew the storm had only begun. The first call came at 6:17 the next morning. My phone buzzed across the nightstand, jolting me out of uneasy sleep. Rachel's name flashed on the screen. My heart thudded. What have you done? Her voice cracked through the line, raw with fury. I sat up, pulling the blanket tighter around me. Rachel, don't you? Rachel, me. Ethan just got off the phone with the bank. They're pulling his financing. The financing Dad helped him secure. How could you do this? I pressed my fingers to my temple, the beginnings of a headache forming. I think we should talk about this in person. No, tell me right now, did you cancel Dad's loan guarantee? The rage in her voice stunned me. My daughter, usually calm, was breathing hard as though she had been running. Yes, I said, the word dropping heavy between us. A sharp silence, then, why, because of some stupid toast? He was joking, Mom. I closed my eyes, steadying my breath. This isn't about the toast. That's exactly what it's about. This is you being petty and vindictive. You've never liked Ethan. Her words pierced deeper than she knew. I liked him once, I whispered. When you first brought him home, I saw his charm. Your father, he had reservations. I could almost hear Robert's voice, the memory of his quiet warning. Something's off about that man. How I had brushed it aside as overprotectiveness. Rachel's voice cut in, trembling with fury. This is about you. You've always resented him. You can't stand that we're successful, that we're happy. That's not true. Then fix it. Call the bank. Reinstate the loan. I can't do that. Her silence stretched, brittle and sharp. Then she hissed, don't expect to hear from us again. The line went dead. I set the phone down slowly. The house felt cavernous, the quiet suffocating. Every one of my 68 years weighed on me. I wrapped my robe tighter and went to the kitchen. As I prepared my morning tea, memories crowded in, each one a warning I had ignored. 3 Christmases ago, Ethan had asked Robert for a temporary loan to cover a cash flow problem. Robert had pressed for details, but Ethan grew defensive. 2 years ago, I overheard him on the phone, voice hushed, promising someone he'd have the money soon. Last Thanksgiving, he cornered me in the kitchen, asking whether Robert had left investments I might put into his ventures. Each moment had seemed small at the time, easy to dismiss in the name of family peace, but stacked together, they formed a picture I could no longer ignore. The kettle whistled. I poured hot water into the cup, watching the amber swirl. My phone buzzed again. Rachel. This time, a text. Ethan says there's still time to fix this. Don't make me choose between you and my husband. My hands tightened around the porcelain. She had already chosen long ago. She just couldn't see it. The doorbell rang. My chest tightened. Through the peephole, I saw Ethan on my porch, dressed in his usual polished perfection, his expression a mask of concern. I opened the door, but didn't step aside. Margaret, he said gently, his tone patronizing, as though speaking to a confused child. We need to talk about what happened. There's nothing to discuss. His mask cracked. I think there is. You've jeopardized my business over a harmless joke. Harmless? My voice steadied. Was it really harmless, Ethan? He sighed theatrically. Everyone jokes about their in-laws. It's practically a tradition. I thought of the years of small jabs, the way he interrupted me, the family events I learned about only afterward, the careful exclusion that wore me down piece by piece. This isn't about the toast, I said firmly. It's about the loan. It should have been closed the day Robert died. You've been using my husband's name without permission. For a moment, something dangerous flickered in his eyes. Then his voice dropped, smooth and low. Robert understood business. He knew investments take time. He would never have pulled the rug out from under me like this. Robert also believed in honesty, I countered, something you've never valued. The flicker sharpened into a flash of menace. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Be careful, Margaret. Rachel values harmony. It would be a shame if she had to distance herself from such negativity. The threat slid into the air between us like a blade. Goodbye, Ethan. I shut the door in his face, the click of the lock final. Through the window, I watched his expensive car glide away, leaving me trembling. He had confirmed everything I feared. This wasn't about a loan. It wasn't even about me. It was about control. His control over Rachel, over my family, over Robert's legacy. I walked back to Robert's office, pulling out the folder I had been building for months. Bank statements, letters, fragments of conversations. Evidence. I spread them across the desk, my hands steady now. Robert had seen what I hadn't, and for the first time, I was ready to see it too. The knock of knuckles against glass echoed like a warning, sharp and deliberate. When I looked through the peephole, Ethan Ward stood there again, his smile stretched thin, his eyes glittering with something that made my stomach twist. I hesitated only a moment before opening the door. Margaret, he greeted softly as though we were old friends. But beneath the polished tone, menace rippled. What do you want? I asked, my voice flat. He leaned against the frame, his posture deceptively casual. To clear the air. You've put my business in jeopardy. Over a joke. You and I both know that's not rational. Not rational? My words sharpened. You've been using Robert's name for years without permission. That loan should have ended with him. His smile vanished, replaced by a cold stare. Robert was a businessman. He understood risk. He understood timing. He wouldn't have sabotaged me. No, I said evenly. He believed in honesty, something you've twisted to suit yourself. For a fraction of a second, the mask slipped, revealing the steel underneath. His jaw clenched, his eyes narrowing. He stepped closer, lowering his voice to a hiss only I could hear. Be careful, Margaret. Rachel doesn't need division. She values peace. Do you really want to force her to choose between us? The words slithered into me like poison, but instead of weakening me, they hardened something inside. I held his gaze without flinching. She already chose a long time ago. You made sure of that. And then I closed the door in his face. His car peeled away from the curb with a screech. I stood in the quiet, heart pounding, but strangely, my hands no longer shook. For the first time, I felt the truth settle. This wasn't just about humiliation. It was about control. Ethan had spent years weaving strings around my daughter, around my family's name, and tightening them until I nearly disappeared. Not anymore. I went to Robert's study. Papers were already stacked across the desk, neat piles I'd been organizing since his death. Tonight, I spread them wide, searching with purpose. Statements, loan agreements, contracts, notes scribbled in Robert's steady handwriting. I saw patterns I'd ignored before. Inconsistencies in Ethan's reports, extensions that shouldn't have been granted, debts that never quite closed. Piece by piece, a different portrait of Ethan Ward began to form. Not the charming executive Rachel adored, not the admired consultant his friends toasted, but a man who thrived on manipulation, deception, and control. I tucked the most damning files into a folder. My decision solidified as surely as steel cooling in the forge. This wasn't the time for silence anymore. The next morning, my phone buzzed. The message came from an unknown number. I know what you're doing. Stop digging, or Rachel learns things about Robert that will destroy her memory of him. Meet tomorrow, 2 p.m., Lakeside Park Boathouse. Come alone. My breath caught, but instead of fear, a strange calm washed through me. Only one person could send such a threat. Ethan was desperate. Desperation meant weakness. I typed a single word in response. No. Then I dialed a number I hadn't used in months. Charles, I said when he answered, my voice steady. I've made my decision. I'm confronting Ethan, but I'll do it my way. Margaret, his voice was grave. Men like Ethan get dangerous when cornered. I know, I replied, but I'm done being silent. That evening, I placed the folder neatly on the dining table, arranging the papers like a general laying out a battle plan. When I finally called Rachel, her voice was still sharp with anger. "There's nothing to discuss, Mom." "Yes, there is," I said, my words carrying more power than I'd felt in years. "You can refuse to listen to me, but if you do, you'll regret it for the rest of your life." Her silence stretched until I thought she would hang up. Then her voice broke through, small, uncertain. "When?" "Noon, tomorrow, at my house." I hung up, staring at the storm clouds gathering beyond the window. Tomorrow would change everything, for better or worse. So stay with me, because what I uncovered in those papers was enough to bring Ethan's empire crumbling down. You don't want to miss what comes next. If you're listening, share this story, let it reach farther, because the storm is only beginning. The thunderstorm rolled across the horizon that morning, heavy clouds pressing low, mirroring the weight inside me. By noon, the house was set. The folder of documents waited on the dining table, every page marked with the truth Ethan had tried so hard to bury. I moved through the rooms in silence, the grandfather clock ticking like a countdown. When the doorbell finally rang, I braced myself. But it wasn't Rachel. Standing on my porch was Charles Bennett, Robert's oldest friend and business partner, his tall frame bent slightly with age, a cardboard box cradled in his arms. His weathered face softened when he saw me. "Margaret," he said warmly, pulling me into a brief hug. "It's been too long." I ushered him inside, grateful for a familiar presence. He set the box down on the coffee table. "Found these cleaning out my garage," he explained. "Old files of Robert's. Thought you might want them." My breath caught. More of Robert's careful records. As I made coffee, Charles wandered to the dining table where I had already spread Ethan's papers. He frowned, scanning the array. "Working on something?" he asked carefully. I hesitated before answering, trying to understand Robert's financial arrangements with Ethan. At the mention of Ethan, Charles's expression darkened. He shook his head slowly. "I never trusted that boy." The word struck me. "Why not?" He took a sip of coffee, buying a man. "Robert came to me about 4 years ago, said something didn't sit right with a loan he'd co-signed for Ethan. The numbers didn't add up. Ethan's projections were too polished, too good to be true. Robert worried he'd misrepresented how the money would be used." My heart pounded. Why didn't he tell me? Charles's eyes softened with sorrow. "He didn't want to cause trouble between you and Rachel. You know Robert, always trying to keep the peace." I did know. My husband had spent his life smoothing rough edges, shielding me from storms when he could. And now, after his death, the storm had found me anyway. The dam inside me broke. I told Charles everything. About Ethan's cruel toast, the canceled loan, Rachel's anger, Ethan's threats. With every word, the burden lightened, though his face grew grimmer. When I finished, he opened the box he had brought. "I always suspected, but this confirms it. Ethan's been running a shell game." He pulled out a file, its edges yellowed with age. "He approached me once, about a year before Robert got sick. Wanted me to invest in a guaranteed opportunity. It looked legitimate on the surface, but something felt wrong. I had my accountant look at it quietly. Margaret, it was smoke and mirrors." I opened the file. The numbers leapt off the page. Discrepancies, inflated projections, fabricated returns. My stomach twisted. "It's a Ponzi scheme," Charles said flatly. "He takes money from new investors to pay fake returns to old ones. Makes everyone think they're in on something exclusive. But it's all a lie. Based on what I've seen, he's stolen at least $2 million. Maybe more." I sank into a chair, the weight of the number pressing down on me. $2 million. Friends, family, associates, swindled under the shield of Robert's good name. "Does Rachel know?" Charles asked gently. I shook my head. "She thinks I'm being petty. She's completely convinced Ethan is the victim." "Then she needs the truth," he said firmly. "She won't believe me." My voice cracked. "She never does." "Then we'll make it impossible for her to ignore." We spent the afternoon piecing the puzzle together. Dates, amounts, transfers. Every thread we pulled revealed more of Ethan's deception. By evening, the picture was damning and undeniable. Ethan Ward had been systematically defrauding anyone who trusted him, propped up by Robert's reputation. even after death. When the last page was set down, I pressed my hands to my eyes. What do I do now? You have two choices, Charles said. Take it to the authorities or confront him yourself. Both roads terrified me. If I went to the police, Rachel might never forgive me. If I confronted Ethan, he'd twist it until I was the villain. I need to think, I whispered. Charles placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. Whatever you decide, you're not alone. After he left, the house felt cavernous again. I sat in Robert's office, surrounded by the evidence of betrayal. The grandfather clock chimed 9 times, each strike steady as my heartbeat. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I know what you're doing. Stop digging, or Rachel learns things about Robert that will destroy his memory. Meet tomorrow, 2 p.m., Lakeside Park Boathouse. Come alone. The words chilled me. Only Ethan would stoop to such threats. But instead of fear, calm spread through me like steel hardening in the fire. I typed one word in response. No, then I called Rachel. We need to talk, I said when she answered, her voice cold as ice. About Ethan, about the truth. There's nothing to discuss, she snapped. There is, and if you don't listen now, I promise you'll regret it for the rest of your life. The silence stretched, long and trembling. At last, she whispered, When? Noon, tomorrow, my house. When I ended the call, my hands weren't shaking. For the first time, I felt ready. Tomorrow, everything would change. The first strike of thunder rattled the windows, a deep rumble that seemed to echo inside my chest. Outside, rain lashed the glass in relentless sheets, but the storm inside me was fiercer. The papers on the dining table were spread out like weapons, evidence of Ethan Ward's fraud, each page sharper than a blade. I had rehearsed what I would tell Rachel, how I would reveal the truth piece by piece. But even the strongest rehearsals couldn't quiet the tremor beneath my skin. Then my phone buzzed again. A new message, unknown number. Stop now or Rachel learns secrets about Robert that will shatter her memory of him. Lakeside Park, 2 p.m. Come alone. My breath stilled. The words dripped with Ethan's poison. For years he had wielded silence and intimidation like tools of his trade. Now he threatened to tarnish Robert's memory, the one sacred thing left untouched. I didn't hesitate. My fingers flew across the keys. No, it was the first time in years I denied Ethan outright. A single word, but it felt like a declaration of war. I dialed Charles Bennett. His voice was low, weighted with worry. Margaret? I'm confronting him, I said, my tone steady as steel. But I'll do it my way. A long pause, then, be careful. Men like Ethan are most dangerous when cornered. I know, but I'm done living under his shadow. When I hung up, I carried the folder of documents to Robert's office, laying it across the desk where his hands had once worked late into the night. The rain battered harder, as though the sky itself knew what was coming. By morning, I was ready. At precisely noon, the doorbell rang. My heart leapt, expecting Rachel. But when I opened the door, a woman I had never seen before stood there, her dark hair slicked by rain, her sharp eyes unflinching. She extended her hand. Mrs. Collins? My name is Victoria Hale. Her voice was clipped, controlled. I used to be Ethan Ward's business partner. I studied her cautiously. She looked both exhausted and fierce, the kind of woman life had tried to break but failed. Lightning cracked behind her, illuminating her silhouette like a warning. I don't recall Ethan ever mentioning you, I said, stepping aside reluctantly. Her smile was humorless. I'm sure he wouldn't. May I come in? This storm isn't letting up. I led her into the living room. She set her briefcase on the coffee table with deliberate precision. I know you're expecting your daughter, she said. She should hear this too. Something in her voice chilled me, a blend of resignation and fire. Hear what? She unclasped the case and pulled out a folder nearly identical to mine. 3 years ago, Ethan and I founded Meridian Consulting together. We specialized in corporate turnarounds. For a while it went well, until I discovered he was embezzling from clients, transferring funds into accounts that didn't exist, forging documents. When I confronted him, I thought I could stop it. Her voice cracked, then hardened again. The next day, our biggest clients received fabricated proof that I was the thief. Forged emails, doctored bank statements. It ruined me. No one would hire me after that. He walked away with the clients and left me with nothing. She rolled up her sleeve. A long scar cut across her forearm. That night, I crashed my car. I wanted to disappear, but I survived. And I've been waiting for the day he slips. Now I hear you're digging, which means he feels threatened. I opened her folder. The documents mirrored my own discoveries. Fraudulent transfers, doctored contracts, lies stacked upon lies. My stomach twisted. Why are you telling me this now? Because Ethan is predictable, she said coldly. When he senses danger, he destroys the threat. He already tried to destroy me. If you don't stop, he'll come for you next. The doorbell rang again. I knew instantly this time it was Rachel. My heart thudded as I glanced at Victoria. Stay here, I said. Rachel stood on the porch, clutching an umbrella, her expression guarded, her beauty shadowed by worry. She stepped inside, dripping water onto the rug. Mom, she said stiffly, her tone laced with distrust. Then her gaze shifted to the stranger in the living room. Who is this? Before I could answer, Victoria rose. I'm someone who knows exactly what your husband is capable of. Rachel's face hardened. If this is some kind of ambush, please, my voice cut through, sharper than I intended. Just listen for 5 minutes. That's all I ask. Something in my tone, maybe desperation, maybe the remnants of a mother's authority, made her pause. 5 minutes, she said at last. I led her into the dining room, where my documents and Victoria's lay side by side. The storm outside roared louder, pounding against the glass as if urging us on. For 30 minutes we spoke. We laid out every fraud, every forged signature, every stolen dollar. Victoria told her story of betrayal and ruin. I told mine of Robert's suspicions, Ethan's cruel toast, the canceled loan. We revealed the paper trail he had left in his arrogance. Rachel sat motionless, her hands twisting a tissue into shreds, her face unreadable. Only her eyes betrayed the storm building within her. When silence finally fell, the only sound was the rain. I leaned forward. Say something, Rachel. Her voice came low, shaking. If what you're saying is true, then my entire marriage has been a lie. The air hung heavy with the weight of her words, and that was just the beginning. So stay with me. What came next would shatter illusions, tear open old wounds, and leave no place for lies to hide. If you've followed this far, share this story, because the next revelation will leave you breathless. Rachel's silence stretched until I feared she might shatter beneath the weight of it. Her knuckles whitened around the mangled tissue, her eyes fixed on the storm outside, as if searching for a lifeline in the pounding rain. Victoria and I waited, neither daring to move, the evidence scattered across the table like shards of broken glass. At last, Rachel spoke, her voice raw. 12 years. I've spent 12 years building a life with him. If this is true, she trailed off, shaking her head, unable to finish. It isn't your marriage that was a lie, I said gently, though the words ached in my chest. It was Ethan. Her head snapped toward me, fury sparking through her tears. That's the same thing, Mom, my life, my home, my family. She pushed away from the table, pacing the room with restless energy. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Being right about him all along. The accusation cut deeper than I expected. Rachel, I whispered, this breaks my heart. I wanted to be wrong. I prayed I was wrong. Then why start digging? Why now? Her voice trembled between rage and despair. Because of what he said that night, I admitted. Not the toast itself, but what it represented. Years of cruelty, the way he pushed me out of your life, piece by piece. I couldn't stay silent any longer. Rachel stopped pacing, her back to me, her shoulders rigid. I thought you were just being sensitive. I know, I said softly. She turned then, her eyes glossy but defiant. What am I supposed to do with this? Walk away? Pretend I never heard it? Destroy my children's lives? That choice is yours, I told her, but ignorance isn't protection. It's a pamehemite. For the first time, Victoria spoke again, her tone steady and unwavering. Mrs. Ward, he destroyed my life because I threatened to expose him. He'll do the same to anyone who stands in his way, including your mother. Rachel flinched at the starkness of it, her gaze darting to me. Is that true? I nodded, remembering the veiled threats, the look in Ethan's eyes when he warned me about negativity. He already tried, and he'll try again. Rachel pressed her trembling hands to her temples. I need time, she whispered. I can't just decide. This is too much. Take all the time you need, I said, though my voice wavered. At the doorway, she hesitated. Her voice broke as she asked, Did Dad know? About Ethan? My chest tightened. I could have softened it, but she deserved the truth. He suspected. It's why he began pulling away from Ethan's business ventures before he died. A tear slipped down her cheek. I should have listened. To him, to you. When she was gone, the house felt unbearably still. The storm outside had begun to fade, but the storm within was only just gathering. Victoria gathered her documents, slipping them back into her case. What happens now? I asked her. She shrugged, her expression grim. That depends on Ethan. Men like him don't surrender their power easily. I'm not afraid of him anymore, I said, surprised to realize the truth in my words. Victoria studied me, her eyes narrowing with something like respect. Maybe you should be. But then again, her lips curved into the faintest smile. Maybe he should be afraid of you. After she left, I lingered at the dining table, staring at the evidence of Ethan's betrayal. The house creaked in the quiet, the air thick with anticipation. For the first time in years, I didn't feel powerless. I had spoken the truth, laid it bare for Rachel, even if she wasn't ready to accept it. My phone buzzed. A new message. You've made a serious mistake. I didn't reply. I no longer needed to. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the slow tick of the clock. The silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt charged, like the moment before lightning splits the sky. Whatever came next, I was ready. 3 days passed. No calls from Rachel. No messages, not even anger. Just a hollow quiet that filled every corner of my house. I spent the hours combing through Robert's files again, following every thread Ethan had tried to hide. On the 4th morning, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find headlights cutting through the mist and Rachel standing there. But she wasn't alone. Ethan sat in the passenger seat of her car, his silhouette rigid, his face unreadable. My breath caught. This wasn't what I expected. Rachel's expression was controlled, but her eyes betrayed conflict. Mom, she said, her voice carefully measured, we need to talk. All of us. Ethan stepped forward then, his tailored coat shielding him from the drizzle, his face composed into a mask I knew too well. He gave me a small nod, polite, almost deferential. Margaret, he said smoothly, thank you for seeing us. Behind him, Rachel's gaze flickered, a silent plea, or perhaps a warning. The storm hadn't ended after all. It had only grown darker. The living room was charged, every shadow stretched taut, as if the walls themselves held their breath. Rachel and Ethan sat side by side on the sofa, though a careful distance separated them. I took my usual armchair, the folder of evidence within arm's reach. Rain tapped against the window pane, a quiet percussion to the storm of tension swirling inside. Rachel folded her hands tightly in her lap, her knuckles pale. Ethan leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his posture rehearsed to project sincerity. His gaze flicked between us, measuring, calculating. Rachel shared with me what you and that woman, Victoria, told her. He began, his voice smooth, practiced. I think it's time to clear the air. By all means, I said, my tone clipped. Business is complicated, he explained, his charm sliding back into place like a mask. There are always misunderstandings. Former partners who bear grudges, clients who don't grasp the intricacies of consulting. Victoria Hale was unstable. She blamed me for her failures. I watched Rachel's face. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes searched his with something brittle beneath the surface. And what about the financial irregularities, I asked. The forged signatures, the transfers to your personal accounts overseas? Ethan's smile tightened, though he tried to keep it easy. Those are standard practices outsiders don't understand. Marcus Bennett is living in the past, clinging to outdated methods. What looks suspicious to him is just modern accounting. I reached for the folder. My hands didn't tremble as I set it on the table and opened it. And these? I slid pages toward him. Bank statements, contracts, signatures dated 2 months after Robert's death. Explain these away, too. For the first time, the color drained from his face. His fingers twitched, but he didn't reach for the papers. Beside him, Rachel leaned forward, her eyes widening as she recognized her father's handwriting where it never should have been. "Where did you get those?" Ethan demanded, his voice sharper now. "Robert kept copies of everything," I said firmly. "He didn't trust you. He simply didn't want to hurt Rachel." "This is ridiculous," Ethan scoffed, but the crack in his armor widened, clearly fabricated. "She's trying to drive a wedge between us, Rachel." "No," Rachel said quietly, her voice trembling but steady. "She's telling the truth." Ethan turned, startled. "What?" "I know Dad's signature," Rachel said, her hands shaking as she lifted one of the documents. "This one is dated after he died. I can see it clearly." Her voice broke, raw with betrayal. "How could you?" "Sweetheart," Ethan soothed, reaching for her hand. She pulled it back as though burned. "Stop lying," she snapped, tears spilling over. "I called Marcus myself, then I spoke to 3 of your former clients. They confirmed everything." The atmosphere shifted, thick and electric. Ethan's mask slipped further, fury bleeding through. "You went behind my back?" he snarled. "Like you went behind mine for years?" Rachel shot back, her voice sharp as glass. "Like you used my father's name after his death? Like you threatened my mother?" Ethan surged to his feet, his composure shattering. "I don't have to listen to this." "Yes, you do," I said firmly, rising from my chair. "For once in your life, Ethan Ward, you will sit and hear the truth." Something in my voice, steady, unyielding, pinned him where he stood. Slowly, with a glare that could cut stone, he sank back onto the sofa. "Here's what's going to happen," I continued, my words slicing through the silence. "You're going to sign a confession. Every fraudulent transaction, every misappropriated dollar, every lie. You'll begin restitution with those you have harmed, starting with Victoria Hale." He laughed bitterly. "Or what? You'll go to the police? Drag Rachel's name through scandal? Tarnish Robert's memory? You'd destroy everything." "If that's what it takes," I said, my voice cold, "you wouldn't dare." "She wouldn't have to," Rachel interrupted, her voice breaking, but resolute. "I would." Ethan turned to her, disbelief flashing across his face. "You'd turn in your own husband?" "The man I married doesn't exist," she said, her tears falling freely now. "He never did." The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan's gaze darted between us, his mind racing, searching for escape. He found none. "You have until tomorrow morning," I said at last, my voice cutting through like a gavel. "Confession and restitution, or we take everything to the authorities." Ethan rose again, his features twisted with rage. "This isn't over." "Yes," Rachel whispered, slipping the ring from her finger and setting it on the table. "It is." The sight of that band gleaming in the dim light struck harder than any words. Ethan's face contorted, anger, disbelief, the dawning realization that he had finally lost control. He stormed out, the door slamming so violently it shook the house. Rachel sat frozen, staring at the naked place on her hand. I moved to her side, gathering her trembling fingers into mine. "I'm sorry," I whispered. She lifted her eyes, red-rimmed but clear. "Don't be. You and Dad tried to warn me. I just couldn't see it." Outside, I heard Ethan's car roar to life, tires screeching as he tore down the street. The storm outside had lessened, but in my chest, the thunder still rumbled. This battle wasn't over yet, but for the first time, I knew he could no longer silence us. So if you followed this far, don't turn away now. Share this story, keep listening, because the storm may be breaking, but the reckoning is only just beginning. 6 months can change the world. The maple tree outside my window, bare and skeletal on the night Ethan stormed out, now blazed with autumn color. Leaves in crimson and gold drifted to the ground, blanketing the yard in firelight. In that same span of time, my daughter's life had been torn apart, stitched back together, and reborn in ways neither of us could have imagined. Rachel stood taller now, the weight of Ethan's shadow gone from her shoulders. Her beauty hadn't diminished under grief. It had sharpened into something stronger, tempered by fire. She arrived at my door often, sometimes 3 nights a week, carrying her briefcase, her smile tinged with exhaustion, but free of the brittle edge she'd once worn. The night she came with the news of the divorce, I was slicing apples for a pie. She slipped inside, her voice echoing down the hallway. "Mom, in here," I called. She appeared in the kitchen doorway, her eyes tired but glowing. "Court went well," she said, stealing an apple slice from the cutting board. "The divorce is final, officially, as of 2 hours ago." I set the knife down, my throat tightening as I embraced her. "How do you feel?" She held me tightly, then drew back, her lips trembling into a smile. "Free. Sad about the years wasted, but mostly free." We moved easily around the kitchen together, as though years of distance had never stretched between us. She set the table, fetched the plates, while I slid the pie into the oven. The rhythm of family returned, tentative but real. Over dinner, she shared updates that left me both relieved and hollow. "Marcus called," she said, her fork tracing circles on her plate. "Authorities have tracked Ethan to Mexico. They're working with officials there to bring him back." I nodded, unsurprised. Ethan had often spoken of retiring to a villa by the beach, as though paradise could wash away the rot within him. Even in flight, he was predictable. "The forensic accountants finished their review," Rachel continued. "They identified most of the victims. Restitution will begin once he's extradited." "How many?" I asked quietly. Her eyes dropped. 27, including Dad." The number hung in the air, heavy with grief. 27 people betrayed, friends, colleagues, clients. His trail of destruction stretched wide, and at the center of it all, Robert's name, his reputation twisted into a weapon. I swallowed the ache rising in my throat. "And Victoria?" Rachel's face softened. "She's been cleared completely. The investigation proved Ethan framed her. She's starting over, launching a new consulting firm. She asked if I'd consider joining once I finished my MBA. I raised my brows, surprised. "And will you?" "Maybe." Her smile grew, tentative but hopeful. "It feels right, taking everything I've learned, everything I've endured, and using it to help others." After dinner, we moved to the living room with steaming mugs of tea and warm slices of pie. The setting sun spilled golden light across the floor, lengthening shadows until they looked like brushstrokes across canvas. We sat in silence for a while, the kind that only exists between people who truly understand one another. Then Rachel broke it, her voice low. "I've been thinking about that night. Ethan's birthday." I tensed. We rarely spoke of it, though it had been the moment everything unraveled. "If he hadn't humiliated you like that," she said softly, "would you still have canceled the loan? Would any of this have come to light?" I considered the question, tracing the rim of my teacup. "I think it would have surfaced eventually. That loan was just one thread. Pull one and the whole tapestry unravels. But yes, maybe it would have taken longer." She nodded, her eyes glistening. "Then I might never have seen him for who he really was." Her tears spilled and she wiped them away quickly. "I'm sorry, Mom, for not believing you, for letting him turn me against you." I reached across, wrapping her hand in mine. "You have nothing to apologize for. Ethan was manipulative, persuasive. He fooled many people, but he didn't fool you forever." Her lips curved into a faint smile. "You always saw through him." "Mother's intuition," I said lightly, though we both knew it was more. Years of observation, of noticing the cracks others ignored. Years of silence, biding my time. Later, as we stood on the porch, Rachel hugged me tightly. "I've been offered a position at Berkeley," she said, her voice tinged with both excitement and hesitation. "Teaching business ethics, of all things. I'm thinking of taking it. California is a long way from Connecticut," I observed carefully. "That's the thing." She pulled back, meeting my gaze. "I was hoping you'd consider coming with me. There's a little house near campus, garden space, big windows for painting. It's perfect. We've lost too much time, Mom. I don't want to lose any more." Emotion welled in my chest. This house held my life. Robert's laughter, Rachel's childhood, decades of memories. But Rachel's words lingered. "Maybe it's time for new ones." I nodded slowly. "I'll think about it." After she left, I wandered through the rooms, touching worn furniture, photographs, the echoes of laughter and grief. Robert's presence clung to every surface. Yet for the first time, I wondered if honoring him meant moving forward rather than holding on. That night, I opened my jewelry box and pulled out an old photograph, our wedding day. Robert, young and hopeful, his smile wide enough to carry me through a lifetime. I traced his face with trembling fingers. "What do you think, Robert?" I whispered into the quiet. "California?" No answer came, but in the silence I felt it, the warmth of his approval, urging me to keep living. The decision came quietly, not in a rush of impulse, but like dawn creeping over the horizon. For weeks I had walked through the house, trailing my fingers along Robert's desk, the worn banister, the photographs lining the hallway. Every corner whispered his memory. Every room carried the echo of his laughter, his patience, his steady voice, yet Rachel's words clung to me as well. Maybe it's time for new ones. One morning I dialed a number I had scribbled on a notepad. A real estate agent answered cheerfully, her voice brisk, professional. By afternoon, she was standing in my living room, clipboard in hand, while I explained that after 43 years, I was considering leaving the home Robert and I had built. She looked at me with sympathy, but I didn't waver. Later that week, Rachel came for dinner. I had roasted chicken, baked bread, and let the scent of cinnamon from an apple pie fill the kitchen. When we sat down, I handed her a small box wrapped in soft paper. She frowned, curious. "What's this?" "Open it," I urged. Inside lay a brass key gleaming in the lamplight. Her breath caught. "Mom, it's for your spare room in California," I said, with a smile that trembled only slightly. "I'll need a place to stay until I find one of my own." For the first time in years, I saw her face light with unguarded joy. She laughed, a bright sound that filled the dining room, chasing away years of shadows. She leaned across the table and squeezed my hand. "You really mean it?" "I do," I whispered. We raised our glasses in a quiet toast, not to the beast, not to survival, but to the future we were choosing. The clink rang like a bell, clear and certain. In the weeks that followed, I began packing. Each box felt like a chapter closed, a memory folded carefully away. I paused often, sometimes with tears, sometimes with a smile. When I found Robert's old painting supplies tucked away in the attic, I held them close, knowing he would have urged me to take them west, to set them up in the light of a new studio. The day the movers arrived, the house seemed to exhale. Empty rooms echoed, no longer burdened with silence. I stood in the doorway one last time, sunlight spilling across the floorboards, and whispered goodbye. California greeted me with warmth, the kind that seeps into your skin and coaxes flowers into bloom. Rachel's new house was small but brimming with a promise. The garden behind it was a tangle of wild roses and soil begging to be turned, and I felt Robert's presence urging me to put my hands in the dirt, to begin again. Evenings found Rachel and me on the porch, sipping tea as the California sky melted into pink and gold. We spoke of the future more than the past. She told me about her new position, teaching ethics, about the students who challenged her, the ones who reminded her why she had chosen to step into that world. Her voice carried confidence, tempered by scars but steady, strong. I painted again. At first, tentative strokes, then bolder until color flowed back into my life. Rachel teased me that my canvases carried more storm than serenity, but I knew it was the storm that had forged us both. Sometimes in the stillness, I thought of Ethan. Word reached us that he had been extradited, his empire dismantled, his lies stripped bare. 27 victims were finally receiving restitution. But for me, justice had already arrived the moment Rachel slipped her wedding ring onto my dining room table and chose truth over illusion. That was the day Ethan truly lost. One evening, as the crickets sang and the air smelled of jasmine, Rachel leaned against me. "We lost so many years," she murmured. I brushed her hair back gently. "We have years ahead." And in that moment, I understood something I had resisted for too long. Silence had nearly destroyed us. My silence at Ethan's jokes, my silence at his manipulations, my silence at his cruelty. I had mistaken it for dignity, for strength. But silence without truth is a prison. Yet silence also had the power to heal. In the quiet between words, in the gentle evenings we now shared, Rachel and I rebuilt what had been broken. I thought back to that night of Ethan's birthday, when I lifted my glass and chose not to react. It had felt like weakness then, a moment of defeat. But I see it differently now. That silence had been the first step, the spark that ignited everything. It was the silence that pushed me to action, that cracked open the lies and led me here, to this porch, to this freedom, to this home. I lifted my eyes to the California sky, vast and endless, and felt Robert there too, urging me forward, reminding me that love survives even the darkest storms. I had found my voice again. And in that reclamation, I had found something I thought I had lost forever. Home.